If someone asked me what my favorite meal is, I would say this. It is a traditional Sunday meal that you get in the Caribbean of stewed chicken, rice, you're gonna get some form of stewed peas or beans, and some sort of green salad. This is basically what I like to call my heart on a plate. The key to this is having the best possible stewed chicken. And I have fiddled with this recipe over the years, and I think I've come up with a very good formula. And I would like it to be part of your repertoire too. And once you've tried Caribbean stewed chicken or brown stewed chicken, you'd want to keep it as part of your repertoire. Stay tuned on how to make this marvelous dish. Greetings everybody, welcome to Brian's Table. I'm Brian Singh, and today we're making one of my favorite dishes in the whole wide world. I'm making Caribbean stewed chicken. Caribbean stewed chicken, brown stewed chicken, it's found throughout the English-speaking Caribbean. So it's an interesting amalgamation of where people came from and how this dish evolved. I have a suspicion that the Chinese immigrants brought caramel chicken to the Caribbean, but combined with some of the cuisines of the Africans who came with the slave trade, the Indians who came with the indentured laborers, some of the French techniques that came from the Acadians and the French colonials, and some of the spices and herbs that the British colonials did introduce to the Caribbean. This is an amalgamation of all of that. But it has created a very unique flavor that I could only describe as nostalgia and my heart on a plate. Anyhow, let's get to it. So my process of making stewed chicken is actually an overnight process. I like to marinate my chicken overnight and in that green seasoning and a few other things, and then I cook it the following day. One thing that I do have a preference for is using boneless chicken thighs. Chicken thighs do tend to take a lot more torture compared to white meat of the chicken, and I find it just tastes better in the stew. The other thing too is stew usually was made with the whole chicken, and you want to get those bones in there. So if you want to get that, you could also use the thighs with bone in. It's delicious. Each one is almost, you can actually do 2 thighs. That's a very hearty serving. So let me just go over the process of the overnight marinade before we get on to cooking, and it couldn't be simpler. Okay, so I've washed my chicken, and I'm just gonna cut it up into sizable chunks that I could use in my stew. This way you're gonna get some really nice bite-sized pieces with a bit of heft to them. Usually with the boneless thighs, I cut them into 4 pieces. I've cut the chicken into equal pieces, and remember kids, after you've handled raw chicken, wash your cutting board and wash your hands before you do anything else. Okay, my chicken's cut up, and we're gonna add our green seasoning first. Brings the magic of what this dish is all about. So I'm gonna put about, a little, that's a good amount. That'd be a nice taste. Well, a little extra never hurt. Up that green seasoning flavor. And then the next thing I add for the marinade, say it with me, Worcestershire sauce, or just as we call it in the Caribbean, Leon Perrins. Touch of magic. It does have anchovies in it, so for those people who have any allergies to fish, beware, but it does add a very distinctive flavor to stewed chicken. And because I'm making a Trinidadian version, And this is one of the key products, key exports from Trinidad, Angostura bitters. Just a little touch adds a little something extra to the stew chicken. It's amazing how this dish, as far as I'm concerned, is very much an expression of Trinidad. It has all those elements of all the traditional Trinidadian seasonings and just a touch of influences from Indian, African, and Chinese backgrounds. And that little bit of Angostura bitters brings that Trininess home. All right, so that's all mixed. I'm gonna seal that up. And that goes in the fridge overnight. And like everything that we tried to do, has a label on it. And that goes in the fridge overnight. Well, it's now day 2 of the process of making stew chicken, and we have our marinating stew chicken. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna open this up right now. And you got to get a look at that. You can see what the green seasoning has done. It has given a little slight cook because of all the acid in it to the chicken, but that flavor has absolutely penetrated that chicken. That green seasoning smell is emanating everywhere right now, and it's wonderful. So this dish really does come down to 3 key principles, and this was one of them. The first one is make sure you get your chicken marinated in a green seasoning. That is one of the distinctive flavors of this brown stew or Caribbean stew chicken. The next thing that we're going to have to master is the browning of the sugar and make sure that it doesn't burn, and we'll go through that. And the last bit is giving it the time to let it all come together and create a rich gravy. So I'm just gonna go over my ingredients very quickly here now, and then we're gonna go to the stove and get this guy cooking. So we're going to use brown sugar and coconut oil first. The oil, I don't want to use a refined oil. I want to use an unrefined oil for this. Hopefully try to make this a little healthier. Yes, it has sugar. We do try to reduce the sugar in our diet, but a little bit on this adds a lot of flavor, but we're taking out sugar somewhere else as well. You're gonna need some fresh tomatoes, fresh onions. I also like to add a little bit of garlic. Oddly enough, the onions and the garlic are ready in the green seasoning, so we're trying to add a few more fresh elements to it. I'm also going to include a serrano to add a fresher element and use it like a seasoning pepper. And of course, it's going to use a little bit of salt and pepper and some surprising ingredients. I like using a little bit of soy sauce. I use it instead of salt, so I cut the amount of salt and use more soy sauce. It adds a richness and saltiness, and it helps color the gravy. And the other element, which is a little bit non-traditional, I use coconut milk, which really contributes to really hearty and rich gravy. All right, let's get going. So the first step of this is to caramelize the sugar. Traditionally, people use like a canola oil. Some people use a peanut oil. I'm going to be using coconut oil. I feel that it would contribute to the richness of the dish just a little bit. So as you can see here, the oil is starting to melt. It's starting to shimmer. This is the point that you want to start adding the brown sugar. So you want to add the brown sugar. I'm going to guess you want to have maybe about 3 tablespoons, maybe 4. The more you have, the richer it gets. I'm just going to do a little bit more here. So as you can see here, that's going to start melting into the oil. You don't really want to touch that. You want to make sure that it starts to come to a point where it's bubbling, just starting to smoke, and that it's completely melted. One thing I'd like to show to my Caribbean friends, I have an old pot spoon. Some of you may recognize this all too well. Canty had one of these. All right, let's get back into the pot here. This is really a high heat method at this point. As you can see around the edges here, the sugar's starting to bubble, and you want to make sure that this doesn't burn at this point. You can take it to a really high smoke point, but once it gets to that point, at this point you can touch it a little bit. You can see here that it is starting to get darker. It is starting to get a little bit more effervescent. This is really a key to making this work. And be aware that when you add the chicken, it's going to really bubble over. So keep that camera away. All right. As you can see here, this is really what you're aiming for. A little bit of smoke coming off of the pot, the sugar starting to get dark brown, almost, and a little black on the edges. This is really what you're looking for, that nice bubbling sugar. All right, we add the chicken marinated in oil now. As you can see here, this is quite interesting. The chicken gets coated with that brown sugar, caramelized brown sugar mixture, and with the green seasoning, it's helping to create a sauce. The interesting thing is, some people will question, are you going to put all that liquid in at this point? But the key to the green seasoning is that it contributes to making that delicious gravy. So we're gonna let this come up to temperature here. Let it come up to a quick boil, and then we'll move on to adding the veggies. All right, the chicken is now boiling, and look at that. You see it's now starting to create its own gravy. It's beautiful. Smell is intoxicating. That's the only way I could describe it. I'm just gonna add a little pinch of salt. Again, nice to have a little bit of salt. And we're gonna add in our veggies, and well, tomatoes are fruit, but what the hell. So let's go with the tomatoes. I have about maybe 4 tomatoes there. I have a medium onion here. And I'm just gonna add a little bit more garlic. That was a couple small cloves. So let's all mix this together here. One thing, my grandfather was really the master of stewing, and one thing that I really loved going down to visit him on a Sunday was he would make stew beef. But chicken is a little bit more accessible and a little bit lighter, better for the gut at this stage of my life. But this dish is pure nostalgia for me. And it's really surprisingly quite easy. It just takes time. The next things I'm gonna add, I'm just gonna add a little bit of soy sauce. I think I do this to pay a little homage to maybe one of the origins being caramel chicken from Taiwan and that part of China. It also adds a little bit of darkness to the gravy. And the last thing I'm gonna add, other than a seasoning pepper, which I put a slit in, you can see that there. I'll just add a little extra flavor, and I take that out at the end. It will be coconut milk. And I just pour that whole bit in there. No need for anything extra, because you have all that you need in the pot here. So let's just give that a mix now. Let it come up to boil, and then turn it down to medium, and we're gonna leave that for about 25 to 30 minutes. So that's all cooked down. And chicken's all nicely cooked. Again, they like the chicken a little overcooked in the Caribbean, and they like to cut it into chunks, and this is all good to go here. Look at the thickness of that gravy. It's gonna be delicious. Let's get to the plate. So this is part of one of my favorite meals. I took the liberty of cooking some rice. This one done by my microwave method. So I'm going to put a little bit of rice down here. Let's get that down here. This is as I said before, a typical Sunday meal in the English-speaking Caribbean. But, you know, even the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, they have their variations on this. You know, meat and rice and peas are always a classic in the Caribbean. So I'm going to put some of the stewed chicken down. I'm going to put that off to the side. And the gravy on this is nice and rich. So keep in mind that that is what I like to have with lentils. And I made these stew lentils. Go with this. I always said if I was put on death row, this would be my final meal. Stewed chicken, stewed lentils, rice, and I always make a little cucumber condiment. Typically, you get it with something like watercress, cucumber, maybe some carrots. Coleslaw is also quite common, very popular in the Caribbean, but I just make this very simple condiment with cucumber, cilantro, and I also add salt and pepper and let it stay out overnight, and it's just there ready to go. And I gotta say that, my friends, you know, if you add a little bit of pepper sauce to it, or hot sauce, that is a lovely meal. I'm gonna get some peas, I'm gonna get some rice, and I'm gonna get a little bit of that stewed chicken together. That's pure nostalgia for me. That, as I said, my heart on a plate. This is my soul food. And I look forward to making this at least once a month, and it's one of my favorite meals to share. So I hope you give it a try. Again, think about ratios, think about the time it takes to marinate your chicken, think about making your green seasoning, think about your caramelization, and just leaving the chicken and the sauce to do its work. And you too will enjoy stewed chicken or brown stewed chicken, Caribbean style. Question of the day. Have you ever tried Trinidadian stewed chicken or Caribbean brown stewed chicken? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've tried making it yourself, also let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching and spending your time with me and the time that you spend watching my videos. If you like what you're seeing, please hit the like button, also subscribe. It really helps me understand how to improve my channel and grow its audience. And I really do hope you give this recipe a try. Stewed chicken, Caribbean style, part of your repertoire. It obviously help you go out there and taste the world just a little bit better.